Hi guys, how are you? Welcome back to the garden. Today is a day I want to do an entire full-on garden tour with you again. Last time I did a little spring tour through the front garden, and today I think the garden looks so good and so nice that it's definitely worth taking a closer look at everything. So brace for impact. This is going to be a quite long video. Just in case, if this is the first time you ever see a video of my channel, I've already been doing this for roughly 6-7 months, I believe now, always sharing all different kind of garden moments with you. This garden is in Poland, straight at the Baltic Sea, outside the city of Gdansk. We are on top of a dike. So on this side, there is the river and the road, and on that side, you will see later on, there is farmland. So the garden really opens up in the back into the landscape, which is quite beautiful. But I want to start with you here in the front garden. And since there is a road, you will hear the sound of cars every now and then, so I'm sorry for that. But this is a front garden. It really opens up and just curves around the house, and here is one of the beautiful cherry trees. They are double Japanese cherry trees, and there is something that is quite popular unfortunately with these. They have the wilt, the cherry wilt, and you can see it here on the branches. I already thought maybe I'll do a video about it. This is quite common and quite normal. You still see that the leaves are looking very wilted, and here on this branch you see some flowers, so it didn't even start to leaf out at all. And this is a common thing that happens on a lot of these cherries after they're flowering. They just die back. Not the entire tree dies back, but just some branches in there. So you can get in there, you need to get in there and just cut all of the dead material out. So this is the reason why these are growing extremely slow. But it's definitely worth it. I love them. I don't want to miss them. I have one here. I have a second one back there next to the swing bench, and they are always a wonderful sight when they are in full bloom. So if you just continue me into the front garden, in your back there is a driveway. So the gate is there, and then we just enter the house here. The main entrance to the house is not here. The main entrance is actually kind of facing the back of the house, which is a little funny. The more I think about it, the more I kind of realize how weird maybe it is sometimes. In the beginning, I didn't even realize it. I thought, okay, this is just the way that it works here in the garden. But on the other hand, I think it's nice because whoever comes and visits gets a straight view into the garden. So this is actually kind of like a nice thing and something that is a little bit different. You can see this is one of the really beautiful standard trees that we have here in the garden. This is an ornamental plum, and it already has little fruits on it. So if you take a closer look at it, you can see that all these beautiful, delicate pink flowers produce really lovely small fruit, and they are edible later on in the year. Last year I tried it and they are delicious, but you really need to kind of like nibble it off the stone because the flesh is quite close to the stone, so you can't just like cut it in half. They're very juicy. Definitely plum taste, but a very juicy, intriguing plum taste. A little bit on the tart side, I would say, but I love those tastes. So that was a lovely surprise. Not only is it beautiful, it also produces fruit. Then if we continue walking here, you get to see this big boulder that kind of just like meanders alongside the hedge. So almost the entire garden is hedged in. And the reason for it is, there's a river on this side. This is east facing. There is the Baltic Sea. So quite often we have very harsh, heavy winds that hit the garden here. So we just need to protect it, because otherwise a lot of the plants, they would just lay flat. There is a willow that I cut with you in, well, not autumn, I think I did it in winter literally, and it really starts to leaf out everywhere here. And we just said it's kind of looking a little funny, almost like little Muppets hanging on these branches now. But I kind of like the look, and it is so intriguing when you think about it, that this can pick up so much growth. It is literally gonna grow about 1.50 m to 2 meters this year. So if you stay tuned to my channel for, well, another 10 months now, pretty much 10 months, you'll see me kind of just like hanging in the tree again, cutting it back, and you'll be surprised how much I will cut out of this again. This is like a annual routine that we do over and over again. Last time I showed you there was still a lot of spring blooms in here. There are still, the tulips are in here. I'm going to show you the tulips over there because it looks even better. But I think you can see that a lot just filled up by now. So you can still see a little bit mulch here and there. There's a reason. This is a really lovely euphorbia, and I propagated those last year from cutting. So this year they really come with a lot more growth. But eventually, like next year, they will really fill up this entire space. What you see in here are bearded iris. And if we continue walking to the back of the garden, you'll see they are already in bloom. They look absolutely fantastic. And here, this is a good year for bearded iris. They really come with a lot of these flower spikes and just beautiful. I just love bearded iris for the foliage because I think they have a beautiful color. They really have this architectural element, and then the flower spikes work just fabulous in here. Swing bench, beautiful. It is now in the full sun of the late afternoon, so actually would be the perfect time of the day to take a little rest there with a coffee, but we're going to continue with the garden tour, which also really excites me. The acer looks good that we planted together, and now all the euphorbia are really in full bloom here, so I think it is really a wonderful combination. The napeta is about to come to bloom on this side as well, so I am really expecting this color contrast of the blue from the napeta, or this like violet from the napeta, in combination with all tones of sulfury yellow. This is something that I always love, and this is kind of like the color concept of the front garden with some highlights of white in here, which works extremely well already here. This is like the full-on south-facing bed, so there is a wall here with the rubinia kind of like as our ornamental tree. Already a lot of new foliage appearing on the rubinia that looks super nice, but this is kind of like one of my favorite vistas into this border right now, because here we have the napeta. This is a variety called Walker Slow. It's a perfect napeta for any kind of border planting. And then all these tulips, this is a variety called Twilight Princess. I always really plant them in between the napeta because I just love this look. I just love the combination of the big tulips with the delicate blooms from the napeta. The color combination works well, and then in the back you have the Mediterranean euphorbia, which also just sets the tone for this entire border. Literally, you have this sulfury yellow in combination with the purple. It is a combination that I really love and enjoy. So this is just an angle that I really love around this time of the year. Big drifts of sedum are coming here. This is a variety that I grow in masses in my garden. This is Sedum matrona, and I think sedum is a quite beautiful perennial throughout the entire year, because even though it is not in bloom yet, but if you just look at the foliage, clearly it's a succulent. It has these fleshy leaves, and they already come in all different kind of tones. So the edges are like burgundy, and then they fade out to greener tones towards the center. So definitely a lot of interest already just with the foliage here. If we continue here on this side, I can see a massive huge slug in one of my plants. So there, need to go in and take that out in a moment. Yes, we had a little bit of rain, which is lovely because everything starts to look lush and green again. Also the lawn, which also means I do my rounds and I start collecting slugs and snails. So please tell me that you do the same thing. It is kind of like a little gross every now and then, but I'm like, okay, I need to do it because otherwise I'm not going to have any annual left in the garden. But this is a beautiful sight. Another euphorbia, this is a variety called Tall Boy. The wind hit it a little bit from this side here, but I think that it might bounce back. I don't really love staking in general. I kind of just like when nature finds its own way. Every now and then I do stake, but here I try to just get around with that. And then here the urn, I was so happy that I did this project with you earlier on in the year, that finally this random concrete pillar really has a purpose now. It is really matching well the color of the urn. And then what I did, without you, I'm sorry, I was planting petunias in here because I was just planting 2 petunias in here, so I thought I can't make a video out of it. But they are a very beautiful variety. They're kind of like whitish greenish, green towards the center. And then I really just love what happens here with the trellis and with the beautiful wisteria. It comes to bloom, but we're going to give you a closer look at another wisteria later on in the garden, because there is another one that looks fantastic. This one kind of produces leaves and blooms at the same time. The one in the back of the garden doesn't have a single leaf yet. It only blooms, and that is fairy tale realness. It is absolutely magical. So this is most of the front garden so far. If we continue walking, you will see that this is kind of like a more shaded area of the garden. And still, there are euphorbias that really grow extremely well in partly shade. This side only gets sun in the morning, and the euphorbias look fantastic every single year. Hydrangea paniculata bouncing back, Phlox David, sedum. This is sedum stardust, and everybody always says you cannot plant sedum in shade. Well, sedum stardust loves it. It looks fantastic, bluish foliage, which I think is also wonderful for a more partly shaded area of the garden. And if you look further to the left over there, I think the perfect planting neighbor are these hostas. This is pretty much the only hosta that I grow in my garden. It's a variety called Patriot, and what I love about it is the leaf variegation, because it really brings this element of excitement to it when you have this kind of like bluish green in the center, and then they fade out to white. Here comes something else. White Alfie is obviously with me in the garden again in our garden tour, so Alfie's going to say hi to you as well, because obviously she needs a moment of attention. And if I find a stick in a moment, I'm going to throw it at her so that she's busy. You know the routine. If you see my videos, you know that Alfie's always with me, and the best way on how to distract her for at least 5 minutes is to throw a stick into her direction. So this is kind of like our little narrow path that goes from the front garden into the midsection of the garden. We have a huge topiary sphere here that might need a little bit of trimming, but it's still a little bit too early. And then we have a sumac tree here that just starts to leaf out again. It is known for having a lot of runners and can be a little bit of a thug, but we just have one of them and I can kind of control it. So I can say, yes, it produces a lot of the runners and they just pop up everywhere in a radius of like at least 5 meters all the way around this tree, but still I think it is manageable and definitely worth it because this is one of those smaller trees that has a beautiful autumn foliage. It's really kind of like glowing orange and just magical, especially in the afternoon when the sun comes from my back. So if we continue walking, you see that there is more of the hosta here, kind of like flanking the pathway. To my right, there is a little garden shed, still with the pot arrangements that I did with you. So the Christmas tree is on the left, that looks really nice. The other one is on the compost. Well, I really managed to cut it down for once. I was so happy about myself. So that is history, and I decided I'm not going to buy a second of those trees yet. I think I'm going to wait for this year Christmas to come, and then I go to the garden center obviously and buy a second one because I really love the look of having something evergreen in front of the garden shed because it is already nestled in between all of these like really beautiful trees and shrubs here, but I think it would just so beneficial if there was more. This is one of the shrubs that was here when we already came, so we have these beautiful cascades of yellow blooms, kind of the same as a wisteria is doing, just in a different color. And what I want to do today is also show you a little bit this side of the midsection of the garden, because I remember last time I wasn't really talking about it a lot. What we have here, this is Rose rugosa, which I think is a very beautiful, very easy, non-fuzzy garden rose. It has really lovely foliage. It comes back quite early and it produces very simple, very easy blooms, wide, very open, so perfect for any kind of pollinators, and they are heavily scented. So sitting here on the top terrace, it is always a good idea to have something close to your terrace that comes with a scent, because then you get to enjoy it when you're sitting on the terrace. And this is the reason why I have it here and also on the other side of the terrace. So when there is a nice warm day, they really fill up this entire area here. And this is also why I have the lilac here. This lilac normally would come to bloom almost now. I have two more that I can show you in a second, and you will see that they already have buds. But this one here, I trimmed it back with you very late in the year, and I always do it like that. It starts leafing out now. So this was supposed to be dwarf lilac, and it decided to not be a dwarf, because I think it just loves its life here, which is wonderful. But when I always cut it back hard, this comes to bloom pretty much in July, which is totally unnormal for any kind of lilac, but still beautiful, because then when we have high summer, you can sit here on the terrace and this entire area is also filled with a scent of lilac, which is just beautiful. Continue walking, you get to see already a first drift of bearded iris. There are more in the back. This is my favorite variety. It is called English Cottage. Quite big blooms, very delicate. You can tell it's kind of like a very nice lilac tone and then fading into white, and the beard is also just very simple, light yellow. The neighbor comes with a tractor now, so I'm sorry for that. I hope he's just passing through. Let's see. If we continue walking, you see that there's more Nepeta here. So this is something you will definitely find across my entire garden. There's always Nepeta walker slow in the front of the border, because I love it. It comes back extremely early in the year, it flowers early, and it flowers almost throughout the entire season. Box spheres are looking really good, a lot of fresh new green growth already. It's almost about time to prune your box, by the way. So the rule of thumb is you would prune your box around Derby Day, which is at one point in June. I've never been to the Derby, so I don't really know when it is exactly. So always need to Google, but I know at one point in June, there is a good time to do some pruning for your box spheres. Okay, do we continue now with the tractor or not? Okay, you say yes, okay, I hope it's a good idea. This side here, there are a lot of grasses, and obviously grasses come back a little later. Miscanthus, Calamagrossus, Carlfirster. This is Panacetum Hammond, so it's kind of just like from a little lower like this height up to this height, and then it's really to this towering miscanthus. So there is this moment of tranquility and serenity at this side. What I want to do is we just step over the border here, because I also want to show you this little side here now, because I did a pot arrangement with you just, I think, in my previous video, and I love it. I think this is just the most welcoming site you could possibly have when you come back home, and I'm really happy with the way on how I arrange these pots here. So I have a cluster here, I have a cluster there, and then up there. and especially the delphiniums. I mean, I told you multiple occasions that it is very difficult for me to grow delphiniums in the garden because they are just a magnet for slugs and snails, but still I think that here in the containers they are beautiful. And isn't that just an incredible color? Still so in love with this. And really, I told you already in that video, I just love the combination of this mauve tone with a white center, then the grass with a white leaf variegation. And then as we go down here, the white petunias that are centered in the evening hours, and then the white violas. I feel this is just like a really lovely combination in general. And if we just swing around completely to that side now, there is this other pot arrangement. I'm not really sure if I showed you really in the end how it looked when I did that arrangement there. So I put one pot with petunias in here as well, and then absolute beautiful wisteria. So this is something that we see every single time when we come out of the house. And also I think color-wise and in terms of texture, just beautiful. The euchera is about to come to bloom, so you have all these delicate flower spikes here. And then just the combination of the dark foliage of the euchera with the dark tulips, Queen of Night, and then with all these pansies here. So this is just a tiny area that makes me extremely happy. I think what we're going to do now is really walk to the back of the garden because the tractor kind of seems to take a little stop there now. So let's continue and go to the other side because there it should be a little more on the quiet side. Just one more thing I want to show you here though. We have the standard tree here, which is a willow. And I already thought about replacing it because I thought it was always a little like lukewarm, you know, it never looked fantastic. And I thought it would be nice to have something with a red foliage accent here. And if you just look from this side here, it decided to come back on this side, and this side here is just dead as a doornail. There is literally nothing in there. And the rule of thumb to check, I mean, now you can see that nothing is going to come, but if you're not certain, what you can do, check for flexibility, or you just go with your thumbnail over the bark and just strip off a little bit of the bark. And if it's green underneath, you know that there's life in it, but underneath it is brown. I can strip how far as I want it to, it just stays brown and dead. So this is an indicator, yeah, that is just gone basically. So I think we're going to replace that one. Unfortunately, it's kind of like really in the center of all this snapper, so I'm not quite sure how we are going to do it, but this is definitely one of the future projects to come. What I want to show you is a view from here into the back of the garden because this is my absolute favorite vista into the garden. I think mainly because a lot of work into that area. I just created last year this entire new perennial border. It was kind of like where the box spheres are, and everything behind the box spheres was just planted up like a year and 2 months ago. So I'm so thrilled and happy with all the results that we are making. And I just think it is nice when you see how the garden works here. So when you come from the midsection of the garden into the back of the garden, all the flower beds go in like really big curves. So it kind of like meanders through the garden. The planting kind of like takes you to the back of the garden and takes you with you into the garden. And one thing that I always do is I try to play with this momentum of cohesion and repetition. So this is a tulip that I love to grow. This is Tulip Silver Cloud. It is my absolute all-time favorite tulip because it's so delicate in flower. And in the blooms, they are really, the name just fits so well. They are very delicate pink, kind of grayish. And then if you look inside the center, they're kind of bluish grayish in the center of it. Even the pollen is gray. So this is definitely one of my absolute favorite tulips. Beautiful, and you will find this in big drifts meandering throughout this entire mid and back section of the garden. So I have drifts over there and then big drifts in the back there. And now especially with the late afternoon sun, it works just magically. One thing I hope you can see, yeah, you can still see it. Last year I planted a Catinus in there with red foliage. I think it's Royal Plum if I'm not wrong. It kind of leaves out with more orangey leaves, but now against the sun, it is glowing pretty much the entire day in the sunlight. And this one, I'm always telling you, make sure when you plant a border, and even if it's a perennial border and you don't want to put any shrubs in there. There are a lot of perennials that produce actually colored foliage or foliage with a leaf irrigation. Make sure you have something that brings a different color than green into your garden because you will be surrounded by a lot of green just naturally. So whatever you find that has kind of like a bluish tint, a red or like a yellow tone, you just make yourself happy because it is so much more exciting to all the greenery that anyway surrounds you. The island bed, I've been working in here with you as well. So up front here, this is where I exchanged some of the Bistorta. So the old Bistorta went to the slope, and this is a new variety. This is JS Kalo, my all-time absolute favorite Bistorta because it's reliable. It has a beautiful growing habit. Doesn't look like a lot yet, but I can guarantee later on in the year, it is going to be just fantastic. What I want to show you as well is in the island bed, this little angle here, because I think what works very well is the combination of leaf textures and colors. Here is Panstemon. This is actually, these are two varieties. This is Husker's Red and Dark Towers. I think Dark Towers are the ones with the darker foliage and Husker's Red are the one with the more coppery foliage. They do flower in like whitish pinkish tones, very, very light pink though. But I think you have these kind of reddish tips here. Then you have the green roses with another perfect foliage. And then you have in the back these really dark, sinister looking tulips. There is a variety called Paul Skira, and next to it the Catinus with the red. So really try to focus on all different tones of like red and coppery mixed with green foliage, but then the rose, the stems of the rose are also kind of like in a coppery red, and then the green grasses. So I think it's just like, whenever you plant something like this up, also look at the details, because if the rose stems would be just like normal green, it'd be still nice. But just the fact that these rose stems are a little bit on the reddish side, I think that just ties everything together extremely well. Here you really get to see my favorite iris again, English Cottage. This is one of those patches that always performs best because it's just so exposed to the sun. And this shows you, a lot of people also always told me, normally when influencers or people who do these videos, a lot of people ask me, and really probably it's two, but I think at least 5 people asked me now and said like, how do you underplant walnut trees? And to be fair, I had some failures in here. There are some plants I just hated to grow next to a walnut tree. Bearded iris, love it. Clearly they do it, they are very close to the trunk of a tree. This is a patch that thrives best in the entire garden. I could divide this pretty much every single year and they flower. And English Cottage is a rebloomer, which is quite intriguing as well, because a lot of the iris, they flower once a year and there we sit, but they're gonna come back if it is a good year in autumn again. And most of the time they do, which is really special and wonderful. So if you continue walking here, you've seen a lot of these things here. You can tell Nepeta is just beautiful because it comes back so early. Then this is another drift of Panacetum. I'm so happy that they've made it. And they all look really good. Panacetum is one of those grasses that comes back a little bit later, at least for me here. But then once the temperatures are rising, then it suddenly just starts to shoot up. And I think we're just in this momentum of the year where it is almost going to fill up this entire area here. More penstemon there, then I have the tulips and kind of like a field of nothing. This is where I'm going to put my amaranth. So this year I was growing an entire red version of amaranth where the leaves and the flower tassels are all in red. I had red amaranth in here with green leaves last year and it looked super nice. I was like, yes, this is like a winning combination. I'm going to do just the same thing again. Morbus torta. So in general, you can tell that I am heavily relying on tulips and on iris at this time of the year here in the back of the garden. Most of these perennials or most of the perennial border will be a border that really comes to life in summer and then has its momentum in autumn. This is kind of like an autumn part of the garden. The front garden, because of all the euphorbia that I have in there, and the Nepeta, it just comes to life earlier. So this is also like something I might need to work on it maybe a little bit in here. I thought about maybe introducing some snowdrops also here, but then I feel these big drifts of tulips, they're just beautiful for me, especially here when the sun now comes, it kind of slowly comes back. And then it shines through the fence here and then really comes from the back and just shines through this entire field of tulips. So that is a very special element when you just pay a little bit of attention to where the light comes from in your garden and you just play with the light as a good element. What is also quite cute, but you can tell that we had a lot of moments where we didn't have a lot of rain. The Aquilegia are also really cute. They are a little bit on the shorter side, and this is because there wasn't a lot of rain. But again, I have only very delicate pink kind of Aquilegias in here, so kind of color coordinated with all of the tulips. And I planted them in between the grasses here, so that in my idea they should be, last year they were taller, they were at least this tall. So I had this really lovely lush foliage of the grasses here, and then the Aquilegias kind of like dancing in here. The Aquilegias come to bloom, but they are a little bit on the shorter side next year. Next year is hopefully going to be a little bit more rain. What I want to do now is, the tractor is still there. It really distracts me a little bit. I'm so disappointed now. But I also want to show you the euphorbia, the other wisteria in the garden, because it is just incredible. And this is growing at the back of the garage where the kitchen garden is. So if you follow me there, I think you can already see it in my back. Isn't that just an incredible sight? And I think this is worth all the pruning and cutting back off your wisteria. Just these 2 weeks when you can, Alfie's playing with you, I can see it, she's trying to get your attention. Some people always are like, oh, wisteria comes with a lot of work. In a way it does, because it can be a beast and it can pick up a lot of growth, but I think this is worth it. And I just trim it twice a year, in February and in July, and then you're done with that. And then you are rewarded with this. It is scented, which is beautiful, and just this cascade of blue flowers. I mean, nothing beats that. And also here in this area with the white trellis, with the wood in the back, I feel this is just, yeah, one of my absolute favorite plants in the garden. I think now is a good time to go to the back of the garden, because a lot of the work that I'm doing happens on a slope. You know, I did a lot of videos with you on the slope, and things really start come together. Most of the annuals, they're still looking tiny. Hold on a second, there is a branch. So there goes Alfie. And this is going to keep her busy now for 2 minutes, probably, because we're 2 people. That means that she kind of really wants to have all the attention now. As usual, not a lot was happening here. What you can see is that the youth kind of starts picking up growth, which makes me very happy. So this year is going to grow probably another 10 to 15 centimeters. A lot of people say like, oh, you don't want to grow yew as hedges because they take a time to grow. They take a time to establish. Like in the first 2-3 years, I also thought like, oh, nothing happens. But then suddenly out of nothing, they have rooted in, they have developed a good root system, and then they really come. And the good thing about yew is they have this beautiful color, and they can cope with everything, with every soil. They kind of like, now they're in the fullest sun, and at one point the miscanthus are so tall that they are like in dapple shade almost, but still they look just fabulous. So yew is kind of like my magic weapon for any kind of hedging. Because yes, it might take a little longer than a lot of the other hedging plants, but they are just great, great little plants, I think. I showed you this area in my last video because I was planting asters here, so I'm not going to spend too much words about it. Roses make me very happy, very healthy, no sign of any kind of aphids or no kind of like signs on any kind of like mold on the leaves. The leaves are shiny, really wonderful. A lot of buds are appearing, so this is going to be a beautiful sight of blooms. Cardoon looks fantastic. I really thought that I lost these during the winter time because they looked so mushy. There was a third one here, so the third one is definitely gone, but these two look just nice, really great. I've seen Cardoon in Düsseldorf when I was in the park garden with you, and they were kind of like 5 times the size of these. So you can definitely tell there is a difference in the climate zone, but still foliage and accent. Even if, I hope they come to bloom, but if they don't, they're just a great foliage accent. So I think what we're going to do now is I want to take you with me to the slope and just show you a little bit the situation there. Also because it is just really beautiful and filled with a lot of sun. To my right, there is a new herbaceous border, but honestly, I can't really show you a lot because it is kind of planted up, but most of the plants are looking still so small and tiny that almost everything looks pretty much the same. I mean, this is going to be really exciting towards the end of the year, but for now, well, things are still small. Things are growing though. I'm optimistic about it. This is a beautiful, beautiful side of the garden. I love it. And the funny thing is, whoever comes here says like, it's warmer here. And it is. Once you step through the gate and you are here in the back of the garden on the slope, suddenly it is kind of like the air stands here and it feels warm and wonderful, even though it's just a couple of meters difference. I don't know what it is, but this is also a reason why I really love it. So the right side of the slope, this has been like my latest project. This is my vegetable garden. And look here, this makes me very, very happy. So I can't tell you what we're going to have for dinner tonight. Definitely going to take some of these beautiful salad crops here. So I have all different kind of salads, and you have got like Roman salad, then like these picking salads in red and green, rucola, beautiful cilantro. Oof, that tastes delicious. So this bed was worth all the work just alone. I've got 2 more, obviously. Up here, I store all of my annuals so far that I've been growing on. Amaranth looks fantastic. Most of them are amaranth, but just look at these tiny little plants here. Isn't that fantastic? Just after potting them on, immediately the branches get so much thicker and stronger and better, and the leaves are looking fine. So I can't wait to finally plant these out into the landscape. It's also sowing some more vegetables in here, and then you just know what happens. So here I've got all my bell peppers and chilies. They were hit by the last wind a little bit, unfortunately. So I hope that now the warmer temperatures will do these little plants good. And then I was sowing some carrots in the back there. So no sign of germination yet. My strawberries are looking fine here. So I'm just generally happy with the area. And I think what I want to do is, first I thought I'm going to put some really lovely perennials in here. But now, seeing how I work and utilize this area, I think once I don't need all these pots anymore, I will put some annuals in here, because I still want to have something nice in there. But perennials means that next year I can't really utilize the space anymore. And let's face it, next year I'm so going to utilize the space again for just the same thing, for the same purpose, because there is a lot of sun in here in the afternoon. Things just thrive well here. I have everything together. I can easily water everything. So this is how I think I'm going to manage this entire area. If we continue walking, there are 2 more layers of the vegetable garden. So I'll just show you from up here, I think. So the second terrace looks really nice, I think. Potatoes, all the yellow ones are up. They look fantastic. And the purple ones, not a single leaf. And I was digging for them, and they're still in there. They're still kind of like looking like potatoes without any branches. So I'm not sure what to expect out of them. So let's see what comes. I'm just going to step inside the little area now. I hope you get to see it. So these are my cauliflowers, looking great. Then I've got Brussels sprouts in here. This is my red cabbage, also looking so fantastic. I'm so happy about all of these. I was re-sowing some of Brussels sprouts. They started to germinate. Onions, I never grew onions in leek, but they look cute, I think. Sometimes with the onions, I'm honestly not sure. Is it an onion that's germinating, or is it just a grass weed in here? I'm kind of like, oh, when it comes to weeding, I'm a little bit like, oh, this is iffy. So I think I'm kind of like propagating some grass in here at the moment as well. But I just want to wait just to see if an onion really starts to bulk up in here. Then in my back, these are beets. They look fantastic. There are artichokes, fennel, sweet corn. All of these are looking really nice. The bottom layer, you know, I was sowing some pumpkin vines and courgettes with you in there. The pumpkin vines, one variety starts to germinate. I think it's Hokkaido. I haven't labeled anything. Well, I kind of thought maybe I should have done it, because if some of them are not going to germinate, then I don't really know why it's not going to germinate. Let's see. The ones that my backup plants in the pots, they have labeled, so maybe that will be an indicator for me anyways. I'm happy with whatever comes. It's not that I need to have it like for food production or anything. I'm just doing this entire thing for the fun part of it, especially all these pumpkins. So if we continue to the other side, this is kind of like my experimental cut flower garden. This is how I want to call it now. This is what I developed last year. So all of this last year was pretty much overgrown and really a slope. And then I thought, okay, I want to change it, I want to transform it, and I want to make it workable, and just that we can utilize the space, because it would be just a waste. The garden kind of stopped there at the fence, and then we were just looking at just weeds basically, and I thought that can't be the solution. So I am happy that I built these terraces here and really can just knock myself up in here, just really plant whatever I want to. And the top layer I think is quite exciting. So this is what I can already show you. The top layer is mainly planted with perennials, or pretty much only planted with perennials. While when we go further down, I'm going to change it. I have some perennials in there, but I'm going to focus mainly on annuals, because I want to mix it up every single year. I just want to try out different color combinations and different color schemes and keep myself excited. So I think working with annuals will be just the perfect idea in this area here. But what I want to show you is, you can see a lot of landscape fabric still. It's going to be difficult now, please don't fall. Okay, a lot of landscape fabric. I still have a plan on kind of like trying to mask it somehow, but at least when we look from the top garden, I have these little fan sections here and some weeds growing in here. The Hakone clover that I planted with you last autumn looks fantastic. All of them came back, and this is, by the way, a proof that Hakone clover, even though it's called Japanese forest grass or something, clearly that thrives better in full sun, because I have it in partly shade in the upper garden, and it kind of looks lukewarm to terrible. And the ones here that are actually growing in full sun, even more coming towards the end, look fantastic. So if you are gardening in a zone such as I do, in a zone 7B, in a more nautical climate, give these grasses full sun, and I think they'd be just so much happier to anything else. If we continue walking, this is a little area that makes me very happy. I planted up last year. So I have 5 of these roses here. This is another Rose rugosa. This is Thérèse Bonnier. And you can see a lot of buds already appearing. Again, no aphids, very healthy little plants. They will be double flowers in pink, heavily scented, which is great as well, because to your right there is a bench on the slope. So when sitting here, this area will be filled with the sweet scent of this rose. And then here, if we continue, I have a lovely drift of bearded iris. I have no idea about the variety. This is a variety, or I got 3 years ago, one rhizome from a friend of mine. She had them on a balcony, and then she was like, well, once the flowers are spent, bearded iris are boring on the balcony. I was like, well, okay, just give it to me. So I just put it somewhere in the garden, and then last year I divided that clump into 4 or 5 pieces, and this is what happened. So this is a proof on how happy and easy bearded iris are in this garden, and how easy I think bearded iris are in general. They just require full sun and poor sun. That's all there is, and they're going to have an ocean of bloom here very soon, in combination with these beautiful Aquilegia. This is a very beautiful variety. I grew these all from seed. These are some of the Nora Barlow. I forgot the exact name, but great dark, kind of sinister looking, perfect combination with the iris, because those iris are a little bit more white with a bluish tint to it. And then in the back here, I have another iris, a bearded iris, which is going to come to bloom almost in a black tone as well, so almost matching the color of the Aquilegia here. Oh my, this is another beautiful flower. Just look at those. Aren't they the prettiest thing possible? And what I love about these doubles on Aquilegia is that the pollen is still exposed. So wildlife still has the ability to really come in here. It's not going to be like a disappointed bee trying to find pollen in a double flower. So I think they just absolutely fantastic. Yeah, beautiful drift of all of these iris here. And then I have four in total. Elders. This is a black lace elder, 3 in the upper garden in the new herbaceous border and 1 back here. So I always try to put same plants on both sides of the fence now to connect the upper garden with the fence, because I don't want that the fence is kind of like a separation in the garden so much anymore, so that the plants really kind of just like meander through naturally. Is going to come to bloom, which is so pretty, because then I have the beautiful dark foliage with the pink blooms, and then, like, you know, here's a dark foliage, there are the dark flowers, there are dark flowers, there are pink flowers again. I think this would be just like a really wonderful late spring, early summer area of the garden, and already it looks fantastic compared to last year. It kind of looked like nothing, and within a year this entire area just developed beautifully. The entire slope in general, I can't show you everything now. I mean, we've been working a lot in this area here, and a lot still has to come because, well, because things are just smaller still. I mean, dahlias are not grown to their full potential yet, and this is just how it is. Snapdragons are still tiny, the cosmos are still tiny, but a lot of the things are definitely going to come. I still hope that the additional Ricinus that I was sowing are definitely going to germinate, because here I want to have a lovely drift of Ricinus just to have this tropical vibe going on. I checked all the cannas that I planted, but because it was so dry and not hot enough yet, and cannas, they just need the heat, there wasn't too much activity, but I haven't given up on them. They kind of seem to come to life, so let's see, fingers crossed. Generally what happens here, what could be exciting on this slope, is I have 5 peonies there. Just down there, this is Sarah Bernard. They come to bloom in a pink, which is also beautiful, great for cut flowers. Just a lot of different things really come into life here. So I'm going to keep you posted with more and more videos, obviously, that are going to happen here on the slope. And I think this is pretty much it for the garden tour today. I'm going to finish on my bench with Alfie, because this is pretty much where we end quite often our gardening days, or where I quite often end my garden videos with you. Because in the afternoon, when most of my garden videos end, this is just a beautiful side of the garden. We get to enjoy the sun here, because this is kind of like the view that you get to see and to enjoy over the farmland, and where the garden just completely opens up. And this is something where I'm so happy about, because that is priceless. You can absolutely not buy it. And this is pretty much going to stay farmland, pretty sure. So all I can say now is I really hope that you enjoyed this entire garden tour today. It was a pleasure for me. I was super excited to do it again, because I really enjoyed doing the very first garden tour, which was my very first video I ever shared with you. So thank you so much for watching today's video. Take care, guys, and I'd love to see you in my future video again. Bye.